Hello, I'm Emmett, and I made a tiny house. I guess it's not really that tiny. It is scaled appropriately to the little figure people that I make. You see, I'm currently working on a short film utilizing said figure people, and I needed a set piece, and I needed one quickly. Here's how I did that. I figured the quickest way of making a little house would be to make it out of brick and have each wall just be a sheet of foam. I had a pack of foam sheets that I bought off of Amazon, but once I was there, I realized I needed to double them up, because that way I could extend one side to make a width and a length. I used contact cement to put the two layers together, and then left them under a pile of encyclopedias overnight. Just make sure that they stay flat. Before I cut the brick pattern, I made puzzle edges for all the walls to fit together. That way I should be able to take them apart and film inside the house, and then stick them back together. I had actually tested out this method on a previous house that I made out of wood, and I used like hook and eyes on each of the walls. I glued the hook on one end and the eye on the other end and kind of bent it into shape so that they could snap together. That's not a very consistent system. The hook and eyes often fall apart and it's really hard to shimmy them together. Having a square house with just the puzzle pieces edges so far has worked a lot better. Sometimes simple ideas are the most efficient. Doubling them up was actually a pretty smart move because that way I don't cut all the way through. You see, how I plan to do the bricks is to cut out each one individually. It seemed a lot simpler in my head than it did in practice, but I'd still say this is a much easier method than cutting out individual bricks and then gluing them in place. I started by drawing lines onto the walls of foam. Eventually I stopped drawing lines and I just used a ruler. Either way, I cut long lines going horizontally and then I went back and made little individual cuts going vertically. This gives the appearance of there being individual bricks. I could have just made straight lines going one way and straight lines going the other way, and just left the bricks kind of square and more uniform, but I wanted to have the staggered look that actually helps brick walls be stable. Cutting the lines was a little tricky. The longer I went, the more tired my hand was, and I kept making mistakes. I like to tell myself that just adds to the realism of it, because hey, maybe not all bricks are made the same. Maybe there'll be some variation. It is a post-apocalyptic house after all, so a little clumsiness just adds to the aesthetic, I hope. Once I got lines cut going both directions on both sides of all four walls, I hit it with the heat gun. I didn't literally hit it with the gun, you know what I mean. I applied heat. Because applying heat to EVA foam makes the surface shrink up a little bit, and so if you've made cuts in the surface of the foam that don't go all the way through, then those cuts will open up. I purposefully let the heat gun linger on a few spots to leave burn marks, because I thought that might add to the rough brick look. When I got the walls all put together, I started working on the foundation. I used some thicker foam. There's a bottom layer, a top layer, and then trim along the sides. So along with the puzzle edges, they're also kind of held in place by the foundation itself. I should probably invest in a square though, because I am 90% sure that none of these corners are straight, or 90 degrees, you know what I mean. I wanted to make the foundation look pretty damaged and beat up like old concrete. So I made a little mace by gluing some random scraps onto a head of pipe and then soaking it in resin to try and harden everything and pack it in there. This didn't really do anything though. Speaking of tools that I should probably buy, I should probably get a meat tenderizer, because they have that's a built-in texturization tool if you want to do stuff like this. The thing is though, I didn't really want a uniform grid. I wanted a beat up concrete look. When blunt force trauma didn't really do the trick, I just broke out the Dremel and scuffed up every inch of the surface. Then I started working on the roof, and again, I kind of wish I had bought a square. I had some like poster board foam that I used. Then I trimmed it with like a foam brick pattern. It's square enough. It fits on the house. I'm not sure if the house is square, but like it's functional. That's what's most important. No one's gonna be really scrutinizing this. For the texture on top, I really did not want to do more brick. I was done with brick at this point. I've been working on that brick pattern for like a full week basically. So I just put down a layer of Mod Podge, sprinkled some real sand on it, then like covered it in Plastidip and stuff like that. My goal with this was to get it to look like that kind of sandy, bricky, rough stone stuff that you like kind of see in New Mexico houses. I don't know if it's specifically New Mexico. I know there are some around here, but like when I think of that, I think of Breaking Bad and like some of the houses that they have. I'm an expert of words and house making. When it came to painting the brick, I started with a basic layer of red. Basically all the paint was dry brushed on. I just put it straight onto the black foam, no primer needed. If it chips or wears off, that's just gonna add to the weathered brick look, so I don't really need to be that careful with it. After the red, I put on some golds and some lighter tans and oranges and stuff like that. Again, dry brushing it. In some instances, I tried to like put lines of it across the cracks just to highlight the edges of the brick, or I tried to like dab it onto like specific bricks so that you can tell like, okay, that brick's lighter than that brick. When that was all done, I did give it like a dirty dark wash. So in other words, I didn't dry brush everything. I dry brushed all the actual colors, but then when it came to weathering, like you watered down browns and blacks to smear into all the edges and then wipe off. That way it looks dirty and it accentuates the shadows and the cracks. Then I added one last layer of red on top of that. Along the way, I had cut out a door and a window. For now, I just pinned a curtain over the door and put toothpicks painted silver in the window, like bars. I do plan on reusing this structure, and I like to consider that efficiency rather than laziness. Because if I do, then I'm probably going to paint the brick a different color, and then I'll give it a more permanent door and window. But since I wanted to have variation, I'm gonna hold off on doing anything that I wouldn't be able to change. Then I went ahead and started working on some mattresses for the little people to sleep on inside the house. Well, there you go, folks. That is how you make a little brick hut in a short period of time. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.